There are people who are giving me information and they're telling me who you are, and I would encourage you to stop it, okay? I'll just tell you that it's being watched. The point of the phone call is stop what you're doing. Stop what you're doing. Stop what you're doing.
Are you fucking retarded or something?
Look out for Charlie.
So I want to talk about a case that should never ever be forgotten. And that's the case of Michael Cravey, who is here on camera left. Michael Cravey was looking into the Aurora shootings, and he looked into a lot of different things. And the most important part about Cravey's case was that he was not some big journalist. You know, most of his videos have very, very few views. He was not some huge guy on the scene. He was very small. And this was back in, between 2012 and 2014 when he was around. Cravey's case should never be forgotten because of A, his legacy should be kept alive. B, it is one of the best examples of parallel construction ever. And when you hear the story, which I will tell you, it is filled with strange happenings and holes. So he has many videos out there, and he talks about the Aurora shooting, he talks about Israel, he talks about some other things. And back then, the internet was much smaller when it came to this kind of stuff, so people could be picked out easier. And then all of a sudden, there's a video here that says, I may have survived the heart attack gun. Let's check it out.
I start heading down the sidewalk, and these two middle-aged, kind of a swarthy complexion, but not even, it was like they were swarthy but never had any sunlight, and they were a little bit balding, both the same height and very short, like strange. Both of them, from when they rounded the corner, staring directly at me, staring right in my eyes, and nothing. I never felt anything, but I just walked by them, and then the corner that they had come out from around, a white van pulled up, and this person as well, staring directly at me, and it was like uncomfortable, and I just kind of walked past them, and that's when I got a little suspicious. I was like, why did these three people all stare directly at me? So I get to the Starbucks, and I start getting major heart palpitations, like fluttering, whatever. It actually caused me to pause, and I grabbed the railing, and if there wasn't any pain or anything like that. It was just like a rush of blood and just like bunches of heart palpitations, and then I just continued inside, and I got my coffee, and I sat down, and the top of my foot was extremely itchy. And I was like, what is this? So I just started itching my foot, and I looked down, and it's like swelling red, because I was wearing sandals. Swelling red, and I was itching it, and I was like, what the heck? And then I just start adding it all up.
So yeah, lots of people, complain of this kind of thing. And soon after this, Michael Cravey would be dead in one of the weirdest situations ever. And how this happened was parallel construction, and I want to get into this. So in Cravey's videos, like late 2013 and early 2014, he begins to see duplicate accounts of his accounts online, posting things, saying things, and it gets to the point where he says, if it doesn't come from my videos, don't trust it. Because this narrative was being created. He began to receive messages from people saying, quit messaging me, bro, stuff like that. It put him in a really strange mindset. And you have to remember that back in 2013, 2014, things were a lot different. The thought process was a lot different. The ideas were totally different. And they were still really intensely cemented in the 20th century, that type of thinking. Microchips, drugs, scopolamine, heart attack guns. Even though I completely disagree with this line of alternative thinking, I'd made many posts about it on the internet. There were not a lot of us challenging those archaic ideas back then, those Snowden era ideas. So Cravey began to be contacted by email by these, Arab-sounding names wanting to talk, offering to get them money or whatever. The same kind of things that I've experienced with email messages, stuff like that. And they're trying to set up a parallel construction narrative. So if you are talking to al-Baghawi or whatever, and that name happens to be on a terrorist watch list, then you can be put on a terrorist watch list because you are in communication with this person. So they try to set up this communication and stuff with him and wanted to send him videos, trade information, and just really fishy stuff, right? Well, then he ends up dead. Now let me tell you the basic story, the narrative story. This is the mainstream media story. Is Kraby goes out. He drives to an area in Gainesville, Florida, near the university. He sits there in his car. He gets out for no reason and attacks a guy who works there with a knife, stabs him in the neck, takes off. The police go on a high-speed chase with him. He ends up crashing his car later in the morning, running into a parking lot, like a Best Buy parking lot, ends up attacking a cop with a hatchet, and the cop has to put him down. And that's really the narrative. This guy has no history of being violent. He isn't violent. But this happens. That's the mainstream narrative. Now, I'm going to tell you what really happened, as far as I can tell, from learning more and more about technology, about how things operate, about the technologies that they have, and watching this case since it happened, really listening to it and thinking about what happened. Now, it took a lot of time to weed through the bullshit. There were a lot of things said, and I was like, is this really true? I wasn't sure because a lot of videos and a lot of information went up and got taken down in a very short period of time. This came out in a Gainesville newspaper, like actual newspaper. And it says, UF stabbing, chase, death of suspect traced. This starts with talking about his mom. And it says, Maureen Kraby's son left early the morning of the stabbing. He didn't sleep well the Sunday night before, getting up several times. Michael Kraby, 28, left the house about 6:30 a.m., around the same time Maureen was going to work. The note he wrote said he was going to drive around Gainesville, an hour from their City Cross home. She didn't think about it much. Michael was her eldest son, but to her, he would always be her baby. She didn't start to panic until calls started. A family friend called Maureen and said he heard officials say Michael's name multiple times on the police scanner as they searched for him. Maureen texted Michael, but he seemed to have no idea what she was talking about. Around 8:30 a.m., Michael's younger brother, Mather Kraby, called Michael on his phone. Michael told Mather he was going through a McDonald's drive-thru as they were speaking. Mather asked his brother what he was doing and urged him to do whatever the police were asking of him, or to go home if nothing was going on. The reply was, I'm being set up, Michael told him. I've got to figure this out. Maureen and Mather had no idea that at the time Michael was speaking to them, multiple agencies in Gainesville were searching for him in connection with the stabbing of a University of Florida staff member in a campus parking lot. They didn't know then that over the course of the morning, Michael would lead police on 2 dangerous high-speed chases through the city that officers abandoned when the chase became especially dangerous, or that later he would crash into another car and escape into a nearby shopping center. And it wasn't until much later that police would tell them that Michael had run at an officer with a hatchet, and that seconds later, the officer fired a volley of bullets at Michael, fatally wounding him. Details of the incident that led to Michael's death on March 3rd, including his family's recollections and the observations of the man whom they say Michael stabbed, are contained in a 99-page incident report released this past week by the University of Florida Police Department. After almost 2 weeks of searching, Maureen Kraby says she is not one step closer to understanding why Michael left her house, why he reportedly stabbed that man, why he didn't listen to police. See, there's something very, very weird about this case. Now, when you look back, the brother called him and said, what are you doing? Why don't you comply with the police? And he had no idea what he's talking about. He's in a McDonald's drive-thru. And he says, I'm being set up, Michael told him. I've got to figure this out. There are a lot of details to this case. I'm going to tell you that story. Okay, so first I'm going to tell you the actual story of what happened, and then I'm going to explain to you how I believe 100% parallel construction was used in this entire operation. So the real story actually goes like this. Michael Cravey was contacted by someone who was posing as the local weatherman that worked for a local TV station, and his name was Mike Potter. So this guy, this imposter, Mike Potter, contacts him and tells him that he knows that he's been researching the Aurora case and says that he's got information for him to meet him somewhere. They decide that they are going to meet in this parking lot near the university. So early in the morning, Cravey goes to meet this phony Mike Potter. But this phony Mike Potter never shows up. He flakes out. So Cravey, just believing that this guy flaked out, he leaves, takes off, and ends up going to a McDonald's drive-thru. While he's in the drive-thru, his brother and his mother contact him and say, what are you doing? Why aren't you complying with the police? Blah, blah, blah. As his brother said, he says, I'm being set up. I need to figure this out, and hangs up. Okay? After he gets his McDonald's, he takes a risk and drives to the television station where he attempts to talk to this Mike Potter guy. He meets him in the hallway and he says, I'm Michael Cravey. Do you know why I'm here? And Mike Potter replies, no. He asks multiple times, you don't have any idea why I'm here. And the guy says, no. At this point, he knows that an imposter set him up and he freaks out, right? So he gets in his car and he drives back into the Gainesville area, at which point cops are looking for him because he is a suspected stabber, right? This possible attempted murder suspect is out. So they see his car and he panics because now he is paranoid. And he crashes his car and he takes off with the hatchet, not knowing if these are real cops or if they are fucking hitmen or what they are, because you would be paranoid as fuck at that point. He hides in the parking lot for a little bit, at which point he runs into a cop who just has a green jacket on that says police. So he has split seconds to figure out what is going on, if this is a real cop or not. Cop pulls his gun at him. He's got a hatchet on him. The cop claims that he ran at him with the hatchet, shooting him like 9 times, and he dies. Now I'm going to explain the parallel construction to you. So after all these years, in putting this all together, here is a TED Talk on CIA disguises. You need to see this to understand what I'm getting at. So I'm going to play part of this, and I'll edit it down to the most important stuff.
We were, some people said, the CIA's answer to Q in the James Bond movies. We had disguise officers, forensics folks. We were a big cluster of technical capability that could handle just about any kind of operation that you could imagine. Special effects people, makeup people. Tony was chief of disguise 10 years before I was chief of disguise. So we went to LA and we posed some questions to them. We said, we have a problem. We're looking for novel solutions. What have you got? Can you help us? They introduced us to a new concept. They said, what you are calling an operation, we call a performance. That's what we do. We put on performances. And before we start, we have to define the stage that the performance is going to take place on. Then you have to know who your audience is. Who are you playing to? Who are you trying to fool? Then they showed us some tools that they used. The one that really caught our eye is what's called a stunt double mask.
Now, I want to say that if, and it's a big if this went down like they said it did, and if that guy was really attacked like they said he was, this is how it had to have happened. Now, I want you to listen to what she says because it's very important.
So we went back to our disguise labs out at Langley, and we invented a whole new genre of masks. Masks that are so good, that are so realistic, that you can actually get up close and have a personal contact with someone for an extended period of time. They're good enough that you can brief the President of the United States in the Oval Office wearing a mask.
These masks are good enough to brief the President in the Oval Office, and he would have no idea that you were not the person that he thought he was talking to.
Those masks were the beginning of a whole new...
And this is not a theory. She's telling you that this stuff exists. Full on.
...generation of work that we did at the CIA. Then we discovered we could make a twin. We could make another you.
We could make a twin. We could make another you. This is very, very important.
There could be two of you. And I can tell you these stories because this information is no longer classified. Although that cat and mouse game goes on, it's not over. You might also ask me, well then what are they doing if they're not doing this? And I would have to tell you that I can't tell you. Because if I did, I'd have to kill you.
So here is what happened. Knowing this, knowing the technology that exists and existed at that time, the operation was to test an operation on Cravey. So he started noticing that his accounts were being paralleled. All these different things were being paralleled. Then he gets a message from this imposter, Mike Potter, who convinces him to come to the staging area, to meet him at the staging area, right? So he does. He shows up. At the same time, there is a parallel car with a parallel license plate that has been made, a decoy license plate that looks just like Cravey's, and someone who has Cravey's build and is wearing something, probably something like what she talked about, to look identical to Cravey. After Cravey realizes that Potter isn't going to show up, he takes off and goes to McDonald's. But what actually happens is this imposter Cravey attacks somebody with a knife. Then he starts getting calls from his mother and brother, and he has no idea what they're talking about. He says, I'm being set up. I need to figure this out. In the meantime, this imposter car, knowing the local police and what their rules are, rules and regulations, they're taking the police on a high-speed chase. They break off the chase, and then whoever is driving the car pulls it over and puts the real license plate on the vehicle and splits, gets out of there. Now they're looking for Cravey. Do you understand? Now Cravey is also at a point of paranoia. So the police are being opped, and Cravey is being opped. So he goes to the television station to ask Mike Potter if he knows why he's there. He doesn't. He panics. Coming back into town, he runs into the police, where then he panics, not knowing if they're hitmen or if they're real police or what, runs into the parking lot with a hatchet to defend himself in total fear and paranoia, and then the police find him, panic, and shoot him. After years and years of studying this case, that is the only way that it could have gone down. When I showed you that he said, I'm being set up, I need to figure this out, this was talked about in a Gainesville paper. This is like mainstream news. He actually said that. That is the only way this could have gone down. He was set up, and both the police and him were then operated on against each other. So let's go over this one more time. An imposter contacts Cravey and states that he's Mike Potter. He convinces Cravey to meet him at a location where the operation will take place, most likely under the premise of giving him information. Cravey can't sleep, knows he has to be there early, so he decides to drive around and burn some time before meeting the imposter Mike Potter at the university. A car of the same make and model of Cravey's is used as a quote-unquote stunt double, and a duplicate of his license plate is made. And it wouldn't even have to be that good of a duplicate, because in the heat of panic, no one's paying attention to that. But it was most likely a passable copy. Whoever is driving the car is well aware of the local police policies, including what circumstances police will break off a pursuit due to public safety. So if the actual event went down in reality, someone of Cravey's build is dressed up like Cravey and attacks the couple on campus. And at this point, Cravey has waited for the imposter Potter for a fair amount of time and is on his way out, completely oblivious to what is actually happening. So then the actual attacker takes off in the imposter Jeep and takes the police on a high-speed chase, knowing the chase will be broken off due to danger of harming the public. It clearly had a destination. The fake plate is then removed, and the operator carries on as normal. Cravey drives around, heads to McDonald's, completely oblivious and only believing that Mike Potter had flaked out on their meat. When his brother and mother contact him when he's in the drive-thru, his brother wants to know why he isn't stopping for the police, and Cravey has no idea what he's talking about. That's when he replies, "I'm being set up. I need to figure this out." So at this point, Cravey's fear and paranoia skyrockets. He drives to a local television station and out of desperation he goes to see the weatherman Mike Potter. He asks Potter a few times, "Do you know why I'm here?" Potter has no idea. Cravey leaves, but now he's 100% sure he's been set up. And at this point, his mind is going to the worst rational places. Are the cops hitmen? Are the police even real police? Now Cravey's amped up and actually in the game. They've got him in the game. So soon after this, when coming back through town, a cop spots his actual car with Cravey actually driving. This is the real Cravey. Cravey panics, believing that something terrible is going to happen. He crashes his car in a panic and takes off on foot. This is how parallel construction works. The person flees out of fear of harm, while the police see it as a criminal fleeing and evading capture. So out of fear for his life, Cravey arms himself with a camping hatchet and runs into a shopping center parking lot. And at this point, he is rightfully paranoid of everything and everyone around him. The police also believe that they're hunting a homicidal maniac that just gleefully attacked somebody and stabbed them in the neck numerous times. The officer that finally runs into Cravey doesn't look like an on-duty cop. He looks like a dude with a green jacket that says police. Like the dudes from El Camino that are dressed like cops but aren't, that are looking for the money with Jesse in the apartment. Todd's money, if you've ever seen that. They're dressed like that. They don't even really look like cops, And that's how this dude was dressed. He only has a green jacket on that says police, something that you could buy at a flea market, a resale shop, online, or a surplus store at the time. He orders Cravey to drop the hatchet, but Cravey, being amped up and in fear for his life, has split seconds to make a decision. He decides to probably attack the phony-looking cop or run, and the cop unloads on him 9 times. So Cravey's case is one of the best examples of parallel construction in semi-recent history, and it cannot be forgotten. 1, out of his legacy, he wasn't a violent person. 2, because it is one of the best examples of parallel construction and how this can work. And it can help people understand how this parallel construction works. This parallel construction was also used on James Holmes with the accounts that were created, like Adult Friend Finder, where it says, "Will you visit me in prison?" and all that bullshit. And hence James Holmes, photoshopped with porn stars and all this bullshit. And they also did this to Luca Magnotta, where they put his face, terribly photoshopped his face on a bunch of ridiculous photos and made him look like a rock star. And it's like they were smearing it in Luca Magnotta's face. "Oh, you want to be famous? We're going to make you famous." And it's important to understand how these work. His legacy was destroyed publicly, but it's important to understand that Michael Cravey never killed anybody. This whole thing was a big illusion. That's it for now. Look out for Charlie.
Are you fucking retarded or something?
Look out for Charlie.